Okay, welcome to part one of doing the coil vessel. So, this is what I loaded up into the Google Classroom. This is a good design to practice the major techniques of blowing out the forms into two different pieces and bringing them back together again while showing and demonstrating movement. You have to make sure when you're doing this that you have a large gap in between the two. Don't take these up side by side. Okay, the whole point is that you can show and demonstrate that they move away and back together again. Okay, so the first thing you need to do, of course, is make a base. So I'm gonna take my knife, cut a little bit of clay, and just smack the clay like so. Good enough. Alright, you don't want it too thin. I'm going to trim off these edges, but you see it's not that thick either. So I put this down. I'm going to trim off the edges. So you see they have edges a little bit like so. Alright. So this is about 3 inches, 3.5 inches across. So before I put my first coil down, I need to score. I have a needle tool here, but you can use the spear tool that you have, the end of your spear tool. This one looks a little different than the one at home, but you can use the spear tool as well. Make sure the score marks are deep. These are not supposed to be pretty, they're supposed to be effective. Alright, so I put that off to the side. I start rolling my first coil. Any little bits and pieces that you have, you can just wedge these together. You can stand up and do the whole thing, but when it's just this little amount of clay, I can just go ahead and just wedge it by squeezing it in my hand, rolling it around. So I go ahead, roll out my first coil. Now to roll your coils, you have to practice this. Make your fingers stretched out. Keep moving them around. Don't keep them in the same place, but keep them moving around. You'll especially want to work on the thicker areas. All right, move them back and forth. I'm moving it back and forth like this. It starts to get long, just rip it in half. It's too long for the board or working area that you're using. You want your coils about the size of the middle of this tool that you have. Alright, so it's right about there. Okay, a pencil is too thin. Alright, if you have a pencil, that's a little bit too thin. So now I take either the spear tool or I have a needle tool here. Now I got to scratch or score that first coil that I'm putting down. Very important. This has to be a really good bond. That's going to be long enough to make it around. So at this point you can use a spray bottle, but if you have slip is just watered down clay. You can get any kind of Tupperware or whatever. It's watered down clay, and when you put it in the score marks, I'll just put it over here, it kind of helps as like a little adhesive. I've usually just used my fingers, but I decided to use a brush just to keep this not as messy. Alright, so go ahead and I'm going to start then putting my first coil down. Now when you start your base on this, I'm going to say don't even worry about moving it back and forward yet. Okay, I have the first score mark down to score mark. Score marks are going into each other, and I'm then starting the overlapping there. Okay, so I'm going to roll this one out a little bit more. Now that I'm above the base, I don't have to score them together each time. I'm just going to then put it straight up and down on top of here. I'm not going to worry about the back and forth movement yet. Straight up and down. Okay, that's a little higher than I need. I'd say go up to just about 2 inches. No farther than 2 inches. Okay? No farther than 2 inches. Then you want to take your needle tool or the end of the spear tool and score the sides all around like this. Okay. This will help bond it together much better. You could score in between each one, and anybody who really wants to spend more time on it, making sure it's super strong, go ahead and score in between each coil, just like you did with the first coil and the base. But if you want to be a little quicker, just score up it like that. I went and scored all the way around all of those. Now I'm going to take the knife, whatever knife you have. Got this knife here, and I'm going to start smoothing it down like this. You put your hand in here. I kind of hold my thumb down here and my fingers behind it to support it, all right? My fingers are behind the coils, so I'm not pushing them in. My thumb here, so I'm not going to push them up and apart from each other. And I just go all the way around, smoothing them out, smearing them together. You have to be careful you do this, when you do this, that you're not kind of destroying the piece and getting it too thin. You know, you just want to be careful when you do it, that you're just binding the clay together, smoothing it out, nothing else. So now, as you see, it's smeared on all sides, and we're going to go to the next step. I can take a little time at this point if you want and smooth it out a little bit. Let me just pause for a second so I can grab something. Alright, I tried to turn another light on so I had some better lighting coming from this direction. Maybe I'll put this wheel over here so it's a little farther up so I can turn it easier. Now, what I want to do, if you could grab some newspaper, like a big printer paper, any kind of paper really. Newspaper works well just because it's so soft, but it doesn't matter what kind of paper it is. You stuff a little tiny bit in here just to fill this up, okay? Set that to the side a little. Cut another piece of clay off that's going to, you're going to do a second base that's going to cover this. It's like a second floor. So all I do is a squeeze. If you have a rolling pin, you could use a rolling pin. I don't even have a rolling pin. You could use like this. This is like a what is it? Sunscreen. You could roll it with any kind of hairspray, sunscreen, what have you. It's not necessary. This is a tiny little slab, so it doesn't really matter. You'll be fine just pressing it with your hand. Okay, so now I just put this on top of here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace around so it fits on there perfectly. Perfectly. Alright, fits on there nicely. Now I'm going to take this off and score in between it. When I put it back on, I want to make sure it fits as nice as it does now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little mark. This is just a reminder. I'm going to get rid of this later. Right here and down the side. This is just so when I put it back, I know exactly where to put it. And take it back off. Move this over the side right now. Flip this upside down. And now I'm just going to score all around here, and I'm going to score all around here. Let me pause this, and I'll come back, and it'll be done. Okay, so now you see this is scored here. This is scored along the top here. I find the spot where I made my mark, right there and there. This is how it fits on. I'm going to take a little bit of slip, or I could, if you don't have slip, just go ahead and give it a light spray with water. You just got to be careful. Don't put too much water on there, because you could just make this whole thing get way too wet and just collapse on itself. That's why you got to be careful at the very bottom. This is the bottom part of the sculpture, that it's not too thin, because it'll collapse under the weight of the clay that we add to the top of it. This is always going to be the thicker clay of all of it. So now I put this on there. The score marks are to each other. I'm going to go even farther and just score down the outside rim. Why did I put the newspapers under there, inside there, you think? Think about it a second. Why did I put that newspaper in there? Remember, none of the questions I pose are trick questions. As you can probably surmise, I did it so this slab, because this is soft clay, doesn't just fall in on itself. Okay, it just doesn't bend in. That's all. It's just support. And the newspaper can just stay in there. When it's fired, goes in a kiln, it'll just burn up. Be fine. Of course, you did make a huge air bubble here, right? This is enclosed clay. Totally enclosed. It's a huge air bubble. If this is going to be fired like this, it would blow up. The air would expand, this whole thing would blow up. Later on, we'll poke a hole in the bottom, but I don't want to do it now when the clay's so soft. So now what we do is we have our base. This is basically this part here, okay? So I just got to try to think about then where I want, and I want this to transition really well into two other forms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about that. I don't want it to look like these two forms are just sitting on another one. I want to make it look like a natural tree growing out of a trunk or what have you. So maybe I'll start pushing this in right now as much as I can get away with without trying to without destroying the thing. Pinch it in a little bit. Okay, I think that's about as much as I can get away with. I think I want one. Being asymmetrical is usually a little more interesting in my opinion, meaning it's not the same on both sides. So I think I'll have this side be a little bit smaller. This side be a little bit larger as a form. So I'm going to go around and score both sides of this. And then I'm going to make another coil and get it ready to put on. I'm going to pause. So keep in mind when you're rolling coils, let's do one more visual of me doing that. If I have a bunch of clay, you don't have to wedge the clay if it's already one piece. But if you got a bunch of pieces that are just jammed together, like from previous work or whatever, then you should wedge it together. But this is already one piece of clay. So remember to you just squeeze it like so until you start just, first you just squeeze the clay until you just get something that resembles, a rope or what have you. Rip it in half and then just slowly start pulling it out. Now, since we're smearing the outsides of these together, it doesn't have to be pretty, so just practice. Remember, concentrate on the areas that are a little bit fatter than the rest of them. Move your fingers around. And if it starts to get floppy, like a flat end, this will happen to a lot of people when they first start, like flop, 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 flop. Just stand it on edge like this and just push it down. Okay. So I rolled out already some coils and I scratched or scored the bottom here. And I scored here. This is all scored as well. Okay, so I'm ready to start adding my forms to the top of this where it will start coming away from each other. I'm going to lie slip to both areas of scoring. Put the score marks together. Now you have to start paying attention carefully because now you have to start the movement. When it is, this part has to come this way. So I will have to make sure that when I'm putting that down, this coil is on the inside over here and that coil will be on the outside. Let me show you. This coil, this is the main principle of the movement, everybody, is on the outside over here. See, it's on the outside of the rim and the inside. This seems simple enough, but people still space this out a lot. It's on the inside, it's on the outside. Inside, outside. I don't want this to get too thin. I don't want to put too much on before I attach it. But as you see, look how it's starting to move away from the other piece. This is about as far as you want to go before you then spend time attaching it together. And especially this is important right where you're first putting it together onto your main form on the bottom. Scratch all the way down, scratch into this form. Now, if this is too wet to where this is just getting sloppy and uncontrollable right here, this bottom part, you might have to let it dry a little bit first. Or if you have a hair dryer, hit it with a hair dryer just a tiny bit until it's no longer just trying to collapse under its own weight. Yeah, the moisture, again, in every single project you do is everything. You need it to be dry enough to hold itself up, but you can't let it get too dry where it's going to crack, get brittle, and you're not going to be able to work with it right. It's a delicate balance, and that's where all the work lies in ceramics. Is working and controlling that moisture level. So I scratch down there. I'm scoring. I take my knife. Careful. Put my fingers back here to support this. Now this is another place where people will have troubles. Is when they start scoring these and connecting it together, then they start pushing it around to the directions where they didn't intend it to go in the first place. So don't then, just screw up what you were planning when you were putting the coils down. Keep it where it's at. And just be careful when you're doing this. Support it with your fingers on the inside, like I'm doing here, and come down with your knife. I lost some of my scoring over here for my next one. Maybe before I go up any more there, I'll put on my other form over here too. I already have this coil ready that's scored. Don't forget that's scored. Some things I'm not showing on the video because the video would just be way too long. But I'm trying to let you know that I did this. I scored here, scored there. So remember, this has to go on the outside over here. Not right on top, on the outside. The score marks are together, and now instantly, once I start overlapping them, this starts coming on the inside, and that's going on the outside. As you start coming up more, your coils can then start getting a little bit skinnier. It makes sense. It has to be sturdier on the bottom, okay? It has to hold up all the weight up top. So it should be the fattest and the strongest on the bottom, and then as you get up higher, your coils can go smaller because it'll actually help so it's not so heavy. Inside here, see the actually maybe I'll have this try to go this way a little bit, so I'll go outside over there, outside here, inside there, outside there, outside there. I guess gotta be careful. I don't want it to get too round. This is what a lot of people do. A lot of people it seems like almost a default where they start to get really round and hugely large because they just start going out everywhere. So just be careful your openings just don't start to get ginormous. All right, so check it out. I mean, these are definitely coming away from each other, right? So now I'm going to do the same thing where I score down through the entire piece. You don't need to see that though because you just saw it over here. Right back. Okay, so I scored and smeared the other side. So now I'm just going to continue rolling. Now I'm already thinking about coming back together. So, because this went away from each other pretty quick. So I think I'll start, I think I might have this form move back. So doing that, I'll try to do a side view for you. I'll put this on this coil down on the outer rim over here. A little bit, because I kind of want it to, I don't want it to come back in yet. Let's see, let's go straight up for now, because it's already far apart. Maybe straight on top there. Inside over here, because now I want it to go this way. So, let me try to show it from this angle. Outside rim. Outside. Inside to outside. See how I have that? I don't know, it's hard to see if the camera's picking this stuff up. But it's going to go, I'm trying now to go this way. I want it to twist a little. Alright? I'm going to put another one on. It's going to be on the outside over here. Inside here. Outside over there. Inside here. I think I'm going to rip it. I don't want any more there. So, check it out. This is moving this way. As you see, it's coming around like that. Okay? It's starting to move this way and around. I'm playing around. This is what I want you to do. Play around with the movement. All right, and how these kind of make twist a little bit maybe, and then come back together. Okay? Let's look at this. So now I'm going to just pause it again, and I'm going to scratch it and smear it. Okay, so I went ahead and smeared off the score marks here. Of course, I'm not doing this like super pretty because I'm trying to be quick about this. But noticing too, this is already, because this clay is really wet. Now this is something you're going to have to be thinking about, is it's trying to sag and maybe fall in right there. So this is something else that's seriously important. I went and got like a paper towel roll, toilet paper roll, whatever, ripped it, and I'm just going to stick it in here for some support. Okay, and I'll just keep it there, even when I put the plastic over the top to help support it. There's other things I could do too. I could, again, I could grab a hair dryer and just dry it a little bit too. That's a little risky because you could dry it too much. You just have to be very careful to where it just makes it so it's strong enough. But putting supports in is extremely common and very useful when you're working with clay. So let's go ahead and start around this other one. So here, I'm just going to go on the very top because I think I'm just going to go, so that one doesn't have to go away from this anymore. Maybe this one, I'm going to go, because this one's coming towards you right now. So I think I'm going to have this one go away. So I'm going to go outer rim over there, inner over here, outer, inner, and then to the out. Okay, got a couple other coils over here I can just throw in here real quick. And now I'm just gonna, first I'm gonna score this, I'll be right back with you. Okay, so now just keep in mind your coils can start to be a little smaller. Now you're getting towards coming, not quite to pencil width, but getting close to it. Now I'm gonna try to teach another little trick. Okay, this is something that a lot of people don't practice right away. So I want this to now come aggressively back over here. Now it's hard to get super aggressive unless you do this one little thing. Now I'm going to show you. You take tiny little coils and I'm just going to roll them onto just one side. Here. Only just the one side. Here. Now they're kind of straight up on top of one another, but no, this one's on the inner lip. Here. So I've just come up on this one side, that's it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your spear, tool, knife, whatever, and if you see here, let me try to get the right angle. Let me see, is this a better angle for the camera? That's hard to say. And then I'm going to cut some of the work I already did right here, and I'm going to create a new top opening that's facing this way. See? Now the opening I've just changed. I've manipulated it. So instead it was like over here like this. Now I've changed it so it's like this. So now I can start coiling and it's going to go straight to it. Okay, so let me just go ahead and score this. I'll be right back. Now just to be safe, I went ahead and put some newspaper right here to hold this up in case this wanted to fall in. I think it would have been better. I could have ran and got, this is a better idea actually, to get a paper towel roll, toilet paper roll, get this in here and crank it so it just supports that. But this can work in a pinch. I'm just showing you just for some diversity and options. But you got to be careful these things don't fall in and break off right here. Because if this clay is too wet, boom, you're going to be in trouble. Let me just demonstrate that one more time to where you're putting the clay. I mean, you could just push rewind, right? But not like you're on a cassette player, but you could take the video back. I'm just going to put it on the inside here. I'm going to start rolling this direction. I wish my phone told me how much time I have already. So now it's going that way, and I'm going to cut this here. So now the opening, it used to be like this, now it's like this. So these two now can come in really super easy, okay? And I can go around. Before I go all around, I'm going to score it and smear it. So now I have these two that are facing each other, and I think I'm going to pick this up because I'm getting some errors, I think, on my phone in another video. So this is part one. Check out part two where we'll move on from this point. Thank you.